So Simon, I interrupted you when you were talking about your education early on. Why did you do an MBA? It sounded like you didn't need an MBA. You were working for a high growth startup in the tech industry. This is what a lot of people want to do post MBA.
Yeah.
If you have that already, why not do it again? You can probably do a better job than most other MBA students. Why MBA?
It's an interesting note you made about some people want to get into it, and that's great. I mean, I really loved and have loved what I've been doing. I think what's interesting in the MBA is that you're getting people from all sorts of backgrounds, completely different parts of the world, different industries, and it's very exciting and very enriching to meet these people and have conversations and find common ground and laugh and learn. I think that's just been a really enriching experience. You can't get anywhere else. You really can't. And it's interesting because you got people coming from consulting who are desperate to get out of it and move into an entrepreneurial background, and some people who are coming from say the big tech industry and want to get into consulting, and it feels like everyone's looking maybe to accelerate in their current industry and role or completely switch to something new. And it's funny how some people want to get out of one thing and move into another, and vice versa. I think for myself, I first heard about the MBA at architecture school, and a lot of people study architecture. Not everyone goes into architecture. They might go into other sorts of disciplines and fields. I think what brings everyone to architecture is their love for design and love for cities and love for the construction industry. And that's where I first heard about it. I thought that if I was ever going to go from architecture maybe into, say, property development, an MBA would probably make a lot of sense, like learning all these business skills and learning more about finance and economics and all of that. But I went on a completely different path, took a swing at the startup world, and it worked out very well. And I was part of something really exciting and special. I think that at the back of my mind, because I never went to do my master's in architecture, I felt like I always wanted to invest in myself academically and continue to do that. It was just about finding the right time and the right degree that was going to make the most sense for the direction my career and life was taking. And so while working in the startup environment that I was in, I always had the back of my mind that in a few years, I'm going to go do my MBA. I think that working in that kind of environment, learning and digging more into various business disciplines would be beneficial. I think by the time I eventually got here, I realized I've learned so much about marketing and strategy and implementation, running teams and organizational dynamics that I have a pretty broad understanding already, and it's all based on experience and learning from mentors and just being part of the process and witnessing an organization grow. And I think that I feel very lucky because I don't think many people have had that kind of experience of seeing something go from a small group of people in a coffee shop to a large industry leading tech company. We're at the point now where we are the largest fiber network operator in the country and are looking at other horizons into other countries potentially in the future. And so I've been part of that growth, and I've grown with it. And I did feel, though, that the benefit to me of doing an MBA was that there is a part of me that is naturally curious to learn and to get other perspectives and learn from other people. And I think also doing an international MBA would give me a global perspective on things, because even if you're part of a dynamic, exciting company, you start to potentially get a bit too maybe stuck into a certain way of thinking and seeing business and an approach to problem solving. And I felt that, doing an MBA specifically with a global cohort from people from various industries and places around the world and learning from them would really challenge my thinking about how organizations can be run and what are the emerging trends in the world and where are the new opportunities coming from. And I think that the MBA has really met those expectations. You're learning as much from your professors as you are from your fellow students. And in many ways, it actually reminds me of my architecture education, because when you study architecture, it's what they call a studio environment. And you are consulting with your professors and tutors, and they're helping you with your designs, and you're sharing your ideas and bouncing it off them. But at the same time, you're spending these late nights till 4 a.m. in studio at university with your fellow budding architects and getting their ideas and seeing how they are interpreting a brief and designing a building or a space for a city. And you'll have the same brief, but the interpretations are completely different. And you're learning a lot from one another. Like, what have you been reading? What do you think of this idea? And getting critique and feedback. And you become very comfortable with criticism because you see an idea as something that's incomplete and ever changing, can be seen in different ways. And the MBA is much like that as well. You're bouncing ideas with people, you're working in teams, and people are coming from very different backgrounds and experiences, and you're having your ideas challenged and you're challenging their ideas, and a lot of magic comes out of that. I think it's really exciting. I think my choice for Cambridge is that I have a firm love for history, and I think that Cambridge being one of the oldest universities in the world with all these beautiful traditions, and it's a place that has, I think, produced the most amounts of Nobel Prize winners in the world. So there is a very strong tradition of innovation and technology and challenging ideas and thinking, and I think that the business school reflects that as well. And I think that being part of a business school that is so connected to this rich history and the wider Cambridge ecosystem is something that I think I really fell in love with. I think Cambridge has a very strong emphasis on technology and is really starting to push the envelope on entrepreneurship. There's a very big angel investment and venture capital ecosystem here that is very linked to the university. I mean, they call it Silicon Fen as sort of Europe's sort of tech and ideas hub, much in the way that you have Silicon Valley in California, where there's a sort of ecosystem between the various businesses out there like Oracle and Google and IBM that have all emerged from, say, Stanford and Berkeley, and surrounded by a very exciting city, which is San Francisco and Sacramento and the rest of the Valley area. And I feel that in Europe's context, Cambridge has something of that sort. And I think that diving into that ecosystem from a very different background, coming from South Africa and an emerging economy and being part of that ecosystem to one here has just been a real interesting learning experience, and seeing how things are done here as well.
Yeah, and in terms of biggest surprises, so for me personally, I didn't know what to expect before the MBA. I sort of had a rough idea of I'm going to be studying, finance, probably learn a bit of management, how to talk to people, how to present, and meet great people. Those were some of my expectations, but there were some unknown unknowns for me, things that I didn't know would be part of, a business journey of doing an MBA. What has been the biggest surprise for you that you didn't expect?
Well, I think you're coming in knowing that it's going to be a heavy workload, but you also sometimes think you're going to have a lot of time just to lie on the lawn, look at the sun, and think about life in the future. But our first term really was a bombshell of decision making and decision fatigue, if you will, where you have this very, very intense curriculum. And you being introduced to a new country, a new town, a university, a completely different group of people that you're trying to get to know. And so I remember my first term, Michaelmas term, which we had from September to December, I was probably up till midnight every single night of the week. And it was either, attending some social event where you're gathering with your fellow MBAs and getting to know them, or going to an event where you're listening to very interesting speakers on a particular topic, or I was up till midnight just trying to get through all our course readings and assignments. And so there wasn't really much time to chill and reflect. This term, I think people have settled in and kind of really got to grips with what they really want to learn here, having gone through, say, the first term. And so I think people may be pursuing their interests more specifically now. They feel more comfortable in the system and how to manage their time. And I think that that's been great. I think that what has been quite exciting is the college system at Cambridge. Oxford and Cambridge, being these 800, 900-year-old universities, have a very particular system, and being part of either Oxford, Cambridge Business School gives you exposure into that. And that is this college system where there's 31 colleges at Cambridge, and they're all separate institutions in their own right. They have their own faculty that are maybe associated to a particular department, like the chemistry or engineering department, but they produce research very much on behalf of their college. And the colleges have both undergrads and postgraduates. They provide housing. They have these dining halls, sporting teams and facilities, and you become part of this unique community of all of these colleges. And every one of them has a different characteristic, different interesting, quirky history. And you really get to be part of a second community outside of the business school, which is obviously your primary and very, very strong community that you're having with your fellow MBAs. And so at Cambridge, there are just so many events happening, both at the Judge Business School, where there are various clubs and societies to get involved in, depending on your interests, whether your interests are consulting or technology or finance. And then there are all these other societies and clubs at the wider university to get involved in as well. So you're never short of things to do and things to get involved with. And I think whatever your interests are, you can really explore and satisfy those curiosities at a place like Cambridge.
Yeah. So you said it first. You said Oxford first. Let's talk about Oxford.
We don't use their name here. We just say that other place.
You used it. So in terms of the cohort from Africa, we don't have a massive cohort from Africa. Oxford does tend to attract a lot of African students from all over Africa. From your perspective, why is that? Why did you choose Cambridge? Was there a different reason for yourself that you feel other African candidates are not seeing?
Yeah, I think, both Oxford and Cambridge are highly competitive universities that have so much in common at the same time. I mean, I think it's a friendly rivalry, and the business schools have a very similar type of MBA program. So I think most people find themselves sort of choosing between the two. But
there are a few key differences though. So I think the emphasis on tech here
versus
the emphasis on ESG and social objectives in Oxford. Do you think that is one of the reasons?
Yeah. I think that's where I was going. I think Cambridge, as I mentioned earlier, has a very strong technology emphasis, I believe, which I think a lot of people are attracted to. I think especially people with entrepreneurial maybe mindset who want to start businesses, are involved in getting involved in the ecosystem here. I think that maybe Cambridge Judge Business School has an edge on that potentially. It's arguable, but at Cambridge it is known to have a bit more of an ESG edge, I think, social innovation, and it does have a bigger African cohort at its MBA.
Over 30, right?
Yeah, it's actually the largest percentage of African nationals in the MBA program out of any other European business school. Oh, wow. Which is really great. And I've had friends who've gone to Oxford and friends who've gone to Cambridge. I think that was something that definitely interested me about Oxford, to be part of the wider sort of African cohort there. But I think in Cambridge at the moment, we have four of us South Africans. We have, I think, 2 Nigerians and 1 Kenyan. And I think that the business school will look at growing that representation, especially when you start talking about the future importance of Africa and the global economy in the decades to come. I think investing more in, say, representation from Africa would be great. I think there are certain reasons maybe why it's not as well represented, and I think that maybe is business school education and maybe MBAs are maybe not as well known in the region, and I think various challenges with maybe infrastructure and access to the African talent pool is maybe a little bit difficult to tap into. As it is in maybe more developed areas of the world. But I definitely think it's important, and I think that there is a lot to learn from people who have worked in Africa, people who've come from there in terms of the way of thinking and problem solving. We had a very interesting case study to do in one of our subjects about Jumia, which is, say, Africa's equivalent or Nigeria's equivalent to, say, Alibaba in China or Amazon in the US. And we learned about how they couldn't directly apply the Alibaba or Amazon business model and approach to Nigeria because of completely different challenges and circumstances and different ways of thinking and
which
mindsets.
you wouldn't think of in the West sometimes.
Yeah, and I think that that's something I've learned. The way we built our business in South Africa, we had all sorts of very unique challenges in developing and building that business. A lot of complexities we had to work through in order to make it work that probably wouldn't be found in other countries.
Let's shift the topic once again slightly to resources. If resources in Africa were unlimited, which quite clearly they are not, but if they were, what opportunities would you focus yourself on besides your current job?
What I've enjoyed about working in South Africa is that there are a lot of opportunities if you know how to find them, and there's a lot of problems to solve that are very tangible. And I think that I'm interested, as you know, in sustainability. I feel that we really have to solve the environmental crisis. I think that the technologies are available to help us do that. And I think that I would really want to help developing countries leapfrog directly into those. I think there's a lot of potential for renewable energy solutions in Africa. I think that the opportunity to get internet connectivity into emerging economies has a lot of potential that'll really help accelerate their growth and the opportunities to young people. I think when it comes to education, it's always been an interest of mine, and I think that we're going to a time now where traditional education is really being challenged. I think we've seen the technologies develop where you have AI-enabled learning technologies now, which, you know, are adaptive. They can translate. You can get the best educator on a subject and have their language automatically be translated into any other language with machine learning, and even translate into text or text into audio. And I think that is a way to just have this economies of scale in education. I mean, I think one of the biggest problems is that education can be quite expensive in the traditional sense. We're looking at school level, if you're looking at university level, even looking at, say, professional training. The infrastructure, setting up the facilities, training teachers, having good administration, access to the right learning material, especially in a world that's changing so fast, where the job market changes, the skills that people need to develop are ever changing. We are now having to become lifelong learners, where your career is likely to change several times in your life. As a result, you have to reskill, be humble, relearn, and learn new things. And I think that what internet connectivity can give people is access to these types of new ways of learning, and leapfrog a lot of the inefficiencies we're now seeing with traditional in-person education. And it's very exciting to see these sort of hybrid models where we don't necessarily have to lose the in-person or human touch of learning and consulting, say a teacher, but a lot of our learning can be done online from any part of the world and customized specifically for your needs. And I think there's a lot of potential with that. And I think I'd want to really invest in that, especially due to my previous point about how the majority of the world's young people are going to be in the African continent. How are we going to educate and skill them to find work, to contribute to the world, to help move the world forward? And I would hate to see that opportunity lost because we stick to old models that are inefficient and can't bring the radical change and development that we need in the short space of time we have it, especially to solve some of the biggest challenges we're facing.
Simon, I want to thank you so much for coming here today. It was such a pleasure to talk to you. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did.
Thanks, Rosin. Cheers.